Welcome to the new episode of the LaunchCast. Our today's guest is Jivraj Singh Sachar. जिवराज ने कॉलेज से पास आउट होकर पॉडकास्ट स्टार्ट किया एंड आज वो पॉडकास्ट पूरे इंडिया में टॉप 5 बिजनेस पॉडकास्ट में आता है. ही ऑल्सो स्टार्टेड एन अर्ली स्टार्टअप इन्वेस्टिंग फर्म जिसका आज AUM $5 million से भी ज़्यादा है. इस पॉडकास्ट में हमने उनकी पूरी जर्नी को कवर किया है और ऑल्सो स्टेटेड दैट उनके एक्सपीरियंस से व्हाट मेक्स अ फाउंडर स्टैंड आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स.
Invested in 30 companies, close to $5 million of invested capital, which is almost 40 crores. And it's been a phenomenal journey. One of the major learnings by the podcast has been that, hey, Jivraj, what you want to listen to is probably not what everybody also wants to listen to, right?
An opportunity which you think you got that many people don't, right? Who gets an opportunity to sit in front of $1 billion founder and ask him the questions you want, right?
Yeah.
I think that's an opportunity with which only lucky ones can.
So I have actually, I've called an Instagram page directly and realized that the founder answered. I have cold messaged people on WhatsApp to convince them to be on the podcast. The part about this is there are so many factors that can go wrong in a startup that you can't predictably understand what went wrong and why this company did not succeed.
Yeah, so we're live. Welcome to the LaunchCast, and probably this is our first online shoot. And no, आप आए that's really an honor for us because आज तक हमने founders को तो लाया है podcast पे, but someone who has been hosting people. और मैंने ये notice किया है कि ISV को आपने एक podcast से ज़्यादा grow कर दिया है अभी. It's not anymore just a podcast.
Yes.
It's somewhere into investing also.
Correct. No, thank you so much for having me, Shrey. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So probably we'll start from your journey because मैं जब आपके चैनल के पहले के पॉडकास्ट देखा राइट सो आपने कोविड के टाइम पे आई थिंक अप्रोक्स स्टार्ट किया था
Yes.
एंड देन यू आल्सो स्टार्टेड आउट फ्रॉम योर कॉलेज इटसेल्फ राइट और द टाइम यू पास्ड आउट तब से आप मीडिया इंडस्ट्री का साथ कहीं ना कहीं जुड़े हुए हो वो मैंने नोटिस
Correct.
किया राइट सो आई वांटेड टू नो दैट हाउ डिड यू कम इनटू दिस मीडिया जर्नी एंड व्हाट्स योर मोटिवेशन कि अगर जीवराज भैया मैं देखता हूँ इंस्टाग्राम पे बेंगलोर से गुड़गांव गुड़गांव से बेंगलोर जाते हैं हर महीना है ना इतना
हाँ.
ट्रैवल कर रहे हैं एक पॉडकास्ट के लिए इतना ट्रैवल कर रहे हैं वो मोटिवेशन क्या है आपके पास है ना व्हाई डू यू वेक
और
अप एंड डिसाइड टू गो एंड शूट विद समवन
Sure. I think the motivations evolved over the years. Yeah, I got very lucky to stumble upon podcasting. But I always, in some shape or form, love to learn from people. So even when I was in college, so I come from Calcutta. I studied at St. Xavier's College, which was a commerce college and great education. But I actually wanted to go to Delhi. So I was a bit disappointed that I ended up not going to Delhi and ended up just staying in my sort of school college environment itself because I studied at St. Xavier's Collegiate School. So spent 12 years and my college was actually right across the grass, right? Because there was a field and right opposite was the college building. So I was somewhat disappointed, but then I realized to maximize my opportunity, I'll do everything during college. So I started bunch of things in college, which were these societies. As a business student, you may not start technical products, but you do start things on campus. And so I was this hyperactive kid who was very active in like societies. So I was active in my Inactive Society. I was active in my entrepreneurship club. I was active in starting a finance society alongside somebody. My junior ended up taking up a lot of that. And I started the TEDx in college. And that was sort of a pivotal moment because TEDx sort of made me realize that I want to learn from people, learn either their ideas or their stories. And that got me into media. So the learning has been the constant bit about why I do podcasts, why I do some amount of storytelling. I do some panel discussions as well where I'm moderating. I used to run an Instagram blog before called Ace Humans. This in its previous avatar was what Humans of New York used to do, these written posts along with, these pictures before reels. So I think I've always loved storytelling, learning from people. Now it's just my way of being very grateful and enjoying. Like when I'm talking to somebody on a podcast and when I'm hosting them, I think I'm in this flow where I forget what's happening in the world and I'm just learning, absorbing. and it's my way to create art. I've always felt as a child that I'm not very creative in the art sense of it, in performing arts, blah blah blah. But now when I put an episode out in the world on a weekend, it feels like that's my creation. And when I'm recording, it feels like this is what I want to do all the time. And so it's my love for learning from people. And also subconsciously, I realized that, not everybody gets the opportunity that I got. And there was a time where I did not have these mentors, this peer ecosystem, the credibility that I have today. I'm very grateful for. And so people who don't, they can learn from these, podcasts. And I had these podcasts to rely on at some point. So the idea is to just start this vicious cycle where everybody can learn in some shape or form. And I feel very grateful to be in a position where I can just feel very creative, very in the flow. And I think my mind expands when I'm in a podcast. So I would not do anything else but continue podcasting. It's been a lovely journey, and I'm really grateful to have started the podcast.
I think the stuff where you are speaking, that what makes you do podcasts, and I
Yeah,
could actually relate with it, that it's an opportunity which you think you got that many people don't, right? Who gets an
yeah,
opportunity to sit in front of $1 billion founder and ask
exactly.
him the questions you want, right?
Yeah,
I think that's an opportunity with which only lucky ones get.
yeah,
And there are many levels on which I resonate to you. The first being, you started out and you have gained your credibility on your own, right? आपने podcast किए, you are in media industry from your college, right? And you are also in your entrepreneurship cell. तो कहीं ना कहीं it's a game which you have made yourself,
yeah,
right? So that's where I really look up to you कि हाँ यार, इस बंदे ने कुछ फोड़ा है ना, ऐसा लगता है. The second part where I relate to you is fitness, right?
mm,
I was stalking on your Instagram that you are also a runner, right?
yeah.
And it actually resonated because I am also a runner. So somewhere and
Lovely.
until I feel that okay, कहीं ना कहीं एक connection है कि जो मुझे लगता है आपसे है, that okay, you are also into podcasting, you are also into running, you
Yeah.
also started out in your college, right?
Mm,
How has the journey begun for you after college, right?
mm,
क्योंकि अभी जैसे मैं खुद कर रहा हूँ पॉडकास्ट, आई डोंट हैव एन एम रादर देन लर्निंग.
yeah.
मुझे सीखना है, इसलिए मैं कर रहा हूँ,
एकदम.
राइट? बट आपने उस चीज़ को मोनेटाइज किया, राइट? यू आर अर्निंग योर ब्रेड फ्रॉम इट.
Mhm.
सो पूरी जर्नी फ्रॉम अ पैशन टू प्रोफेशन, हाउ डिड यू
Mhm.
कन्वर्ट इट? कहाँ से आपने
Yeah.
वो बिजनेस मॉडल ढूंढा? हाउ डिड यू मेक योर पॉडकास्ट एक्सप्लोड कि इट बूम्ड इनटू द स्टार्टअप स्पेस? वो
Sure.
कैसे आपने फिगर किया?
Yeah, I think firstly, like great to know you're also running because I love running. It's a habit I've picked up and joy I've picked up over the last 1.5, 2 years. So lovely to know that. Yeah, I think the main point to note is, people usually look at things from an extreme. लोग सोचते हैं कि यार या तो बहुत ही बड़ा करेंगे, which is why they don't start, और या तो सोचते हैं कि नहीं होगा तो छोड़ देते हैं, right? I think what I realized was कि मेरा skill स्पेशल है इन द सेंस कि मुझे क्वालिटी आती है and I can really focus on depth. That became my strength. And for the longest time, वैसे, the podcast was not very, very big from a distribution lens. Abhi bhi it's about like 50, 55K, and some can look at it and be like, it's not very big. But I'll tell you what's the good part is that the quality is so high that those 50, 55K people who follow are very high quality. They're very credible. They respect what I do. And that gives me a professional edge. So people should know and they should reinforce their belief कि if you do something really well, people take notice. It doesn't have to be cracking on every level. So I could have also said कि नहीं मुझे distribution भी grow करना है. I could have started Instagram earlier, blah blah blah. There are series of things I could have done on the mass lens that I did not do because I was like I know what I'm good at. My pillars are depth of content, quality of content. I will never compromise on them. And since I continued doing that and I've done that over months and years now, people have taken notice and that compounds very well. So that's one. Second is I also feel you should figure out what you're doing alongside it to grow credibility. So I got lucky to join a company called Angelist India, which gave me a lot of great responsibility, ownership, work. And that added to the credibility I was building for myself. Because the podcast alone is good, but you also want to build substance from a work lens, right? And that played very synergistically for me. And that also, I feel I really got lucky, but that I used to my advantage because now I was not just a podcaster. I also had knowledge about angel investing. I was also in a company which was doing really well. And I was also interacting with multiple people on the job where I was good. So that added to the credibility, which also meant that in my initial years of content, I was not pressurized to make money out of it. I think that's the other good thing that happened to me. Because if you're pressurized to make money, then you look at your incentive is different, right? Then your only benchmark is how many people are listening to me. You don't care about the quality. You start diluting the brand. So many people have over the years suggested that why don't you do a 15-minute podcast? Why don't you do a 20-minute podcast? Why don't you do a case study on YouTube, right? Maybe these things will gather more traction. But I'm like, hey, that's not my goal. A, it's not my goal. It's also maybe not something I'm good at. And most importantly, it's not something that I want to do. I don't derive joy out of it. I'm not good at it. And if I did it only for the money or for the views, it wouldn't work. So after years of having the comfort and freedom, I don't have to make money from this. I will do what I'm good at. Is finally where I'm at a point that now, like in the last 1 year or so, we've been able to monetize it well. And also the thing about monetization is there is indirect monetization. So you alluded at the start, right? So I also run an angel syndicate now. And that syndicate is basically I invest in startups and I invest money that I source from my network. What that means is that network has been built because of the podcast. People don't get to see that. So it's not a direct source of monetization. But because of the podcast, I built credibility. That gave me a network. That network now invests with me, trusts me with their hard earned capital, and I deploy it on their behalf, which means that there is a very strong indirect source of monetization. So, bottom line is that if you're ever looking to do something on the side, right, I recommend strongly playing to your strengths and doing high quality work. If you can do high quality work, I think everything more or less gets taken care of. And that's at least my experience. And then you also enjoy it. The last thing you want to do is do something for maybe 6 months, 1 year, and then give up. If I would have given up in any point in the journey till now, I would have probably not seen the trajectory that I'm seeing right now, and I really hope it continues to grow. So, yes, I think just do what you really can excel in, strive for excellence, build depth, and I think other things will fall in place.
Great insight. Right. So जब आप बोल रहे that you don't have the pressure to earn money from it, right,
Yeah,
initially, then how did you manage your expenses then? Because
sure.
uh, for my knowledge, I know that you are also associated with Masters Union, right?
Yes.
So वो दोनों चीज को मैनेज करना प्लस because you are the only one doing a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Podcasting is more than just this, right? There's the
Yeah.
outreach which goes out. There's also
Yeah.
content
Yeah.
engagement, right?
There's a lot
Editing
of
which goes
effort.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No,
how did you manage both things?
yeah, so I was at
Yeah.
Angelist. So where I got lucky initially was the first 3, 4 months of my podcast was by myself, and that was audio only, so it did not cost me a lot of money. But then I started my job, which meant that I was earning my bread, earning money from my job. And in the last 1 year, I left Angelist to full time spend on the podcast and investing. And that's when I think some amount of I took risk. I was like, okay, now I have some savings. I will invest those savings in recording, in post production, in editing, because I have to take that risk sometime or the other, and I'll see where things go. And in about 6 months of doing this solo, without any monetary income and only draining money, I was able to find some sort of monetary support as well. So where it helped me was my job, where I was spending 80% of my time, really helped me pay the bills. And then I was working extra hard over the weekends to ensure that I don't lose out on the podcast. So I know I would record, in bulk. Right now also, let's say if I'm going to Bombay, right, and I want to record an episode, I'll record 3 or 4 episodes in a day. It's mentally very draining, but it's my way to save cost, right? Because then it gets subsidized. One day cost gets subsidized over 3, 4 episodes. You still have to hustle. You still have to ensure that, you go out of your way until life gets a bit comfortable, but till then you just ensure that you have something else. So the insight there is don't do media and content solely until you are very sure that's the pathway you want to take. Like today, also, while so much of my work revolves around my podcast, it is still about 20 to 25% of my life. The rest is my investing, the rest is the work that I do with Masters Union, and a bunch of other things that I do around me. But 20 to 25% is my podcast. It's not 100%. Maybe there's a point in my life where it is 100%. And then I have to worry more about, okay, how much money am I making via the podcast directly? But that's a problem for later. So I strongly recommend that somebody should do this as a 10, 15, 20% experiment in their life. We all work 5 out of 7 days when you're a professional, right? So you anyway have 2 days that are to you. Hopefully we can figure out something, and then evenings, etc., can compound.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, got it. You know, because you are also doing a podcast, and the interesting thing which you said is that risk analysis, right? Because
Anji.
I feel that people of my age don't understand this, which only a generation above us can make us understand.
Mhm.
We I speak for my generation, right? We are like कि अगर एक चीज पसंद आ गई तो उसमें सब दे दो,
Yeah.
right? Either I would quit my college to become a YouTuber, or else I would
Mm.
be a nine pointer. There is no
Correct.
middle path out there, right?
Yeah.
So वहाँ पे there's a polarization which occurs at this age, I think. But
Yeah.
yes, this insight which you gave would be really helpful for that.
Yeah.
आप अभी this segment I would know I'm really looking forward to explore ISV right now.
Sure.
So let's go deep into it, right? Abhi, how many people are working with you in ISV only? How big the team is?
So for the podcast and investing side,
No, for only the podcast right now.
sure, I'll tell you. So I have one, so it's usually no permanent team to be fair. So the only permanent person is me. But there is one team that helps me out with just short form content, and they're incredible. They do the repurposing from the podcast. They pick out the most high value insights. They also recommend that these are trendy things that if you talk about can garner more views. So that adds to my perspective a lot. One of the major learnings by the podcast has been that, hey, Jivraj, what you want to listen to is probably not what everybody also wants to listen to, right? So you have to be very, very consumer centric. And in today's social media age, the short form responses, right, which is the number of views they get, that's the true truth. That is what you have to rely on as a podcaster. And the main job as a podcaster is not what tickles your curiosity, but what will people want to hear, and how can you be a messenger for the audience. So I think they've been very instrumental. Binge Labs is the agency. It's run by two very, very smart youngsters. In fact, they might be your age. They're 21, 20 years old. They dropped out of college to do this amazing marketing agency that they've done incredibly well. So a lot of respect for them, and they've become really good friends over a period of time. So thanks to them. And then there's a long form sort of agency which helps me with my YouTube, which means that I will tell them that this is the video I want to upload. Once the recording is done, they will take care of the edits for the long form, and they will make sure that it's ready. It's done by Soham. Soham is amazing. I've been working with him since my Zoom days. He would edit some of that as well. So very, very helpful and very good. And now I've recently actually started exploring somebody who can come and help me out. He helps Variko's team, Ankur Variko's team, and he showed interest in ensuring that, okay, we can do a couple of things with the podcast, because honestly, like, the truth is that everybody should know their strengths and weaknesses. My weakness is distribution. I don't understand distribution very well, and I feel conflicted with myself sometimes if I have to think, Acha, should I ask this question because it'll get more views, or because this will be more interesting? So I want to focus on it will be more interesting. I want to let somebody else focus on getting the views and helping me out with that. And I'm very upfront in acknowledging that, right? That this is not something I understand. This is also not something I want to do, and it does not require, or it does not have me invested with my heart. So I might as well have somebody to help me out with it. And then there is a production team. That team depends upon where I am recording. I record 70-75% of my episodes at Masters Union, actually. So I'm very grateful to Pratham, who's the founder of Masters Union. he sort of like, I recorded with him once and he's like, hey, you're doing a great job. Why don't you come and use our infrastructure? We already have this space. We already have the setup. So there's a team at Masters Union who are all very helpful. They become also friends. They help me out with the recordings at Masters Union when I'm in Gurgaon. But otherwise, I also now record in Bangalore, Bombay, and there I will then hire a setup depending on where I'm recording. Yes,
Okay.
so
And the
so
outreach
multiple moving
is.
parts. The outreach, the research is all me, and I think that's something I also want to retain. I don't think I can take inputs to be fair, so I will engage with the audience. I will engage with a couple of people who want to help out, but I don't think it's something that you ever want to outsource because see, I was very clear that I don't want to ever become a host. A host is somebody who only just communicates during the conversation, right? If you have to become a holistic sort of or like an anchor, right? I'm not an anchor. What I am is I want to utilize my mind behind the process, which is doing deep research, doing deep questions, also being involved a bit in the feedback process of what works, what does not, then doing the outreach, and then being very alive in the conversation. That's my strength also, right? So I think I can be a great host and I worked hard for it. So I want to extract and bring the best on the table on that front.
Hmm. So
Yes,
when you are approaching someone who is, probably very famous, I would say, who has been doing, well in their career, what would be your steps to, go to them when you
yeah,
started out, right? With the network you have that, okay, probably you can
correct.
get a referral. But when you started out and you want a big guest, what would be your thought process in approaching them? Collaborations, how would you manage it?
Sure. No, that's a very important question because a lot of people and a lot of times I've also wondered, and right now also, by the way, like if I want to host a Dipinder Goyal, it's probably still difficult, right? I've tried and it's not happened. So that struggle is real across the board. I think the way to navigate is first realizing that, hey, everybody is human, right? That does two things. One, it makes you appreciate that people are genuinely busy. So if they're not responding to you, it may not necessarily mean that, hey, your podcast is not good enough, or that you're not good enough, or the fact that, okay, they don't want to be on your show. It could just simply mean that, hey, they're busy. So that's one. The second aspect that I think is very important is when you realize that they are human, you also know that you can appeal to them, which means that if you genuinely write a thoughtful message, if you approach them with sincerity, if you show a certain amount of depth, I think it works, right? So, on the second lever, I strongly encourage people to just like understand and spend time and effort in making a guest happen, which means that don't just write a hello, hi email, or don't just write, hey, I want to host you. Tell them why you want to host them. Tell them, give them a good reason for you to actually be on the podcast because their time is of value. But if you show them that you can also provide value to them, which is you can ask unique questions, you can help them think out loud, you can probably solve a problem for them. You already maybe have a unique perspective to their insights. All of that holds value. So I have been in a situation where so many people, I've asked for a referral and somebody's told me, hey, your podcast is not big enough, right? And then I've approached that person directly and that person has actually come on my podcast. So see, don't trust like anybody, just give it your best. Know why you want to host somebody. Don't just do it as a vanity. Because somebody is famous, you just write them a hello, hi email and expect to like be on the podcast. That does not happen. So you have to realize that you have to genuinely make an attempt and that is very important. And then you have to try in all aspects, right? So some people respond on LinkedIn, some people respond on Instagram, some people respond on email. We connected on Super DM, right? The world is changing. So don't be afraid and don't take yourself too seriously. A lot of people come and also ask me, right? Like, should I approach this person on WhatsApp or not? I got their number somehow. And I'm like, do it. Like, there is no, fundamentally, if you recognize everybody is human, right? Like, if you got a message from somebody else, you probably won't be upset. The least you will do is probably not respond. And that's fine. But you have to take your shot. So I have actually, I've called an Instagram page directly and realized that the founder answered. I have cold messaged people on WhatsApp to convince them to be on the podcast. I've called somebody for them to be on the podcast as well. I have reached out on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, email, all at the same time. I have reached out to their leadership. So if, like, let's say I want to host the founder of Zomato, right? I will reach out to, hey, the brand marketing head at Zomato, the PR head at Zomato, the communications person at Zomato. So I will give it my all. And that's the only way I know. And I've learned that by trial and error. I know it works because fundamentally people just want to give back. And if you are sincere, if you put in effort, people see it. People appreciate effort, people appreciate sincerity, and you should give it a shot. That's my way.
आप जब बता रहे हो that you reach out to people directly on WhatsApp. Actually, probably 2-3 months back when we were planning our shoots in Bangalore, right? I somehow got the WhatsApp number of the founder of Dunzo, and during that
Hmm.
time Dunzo was making these losses and all. पूरा news में था.
Yeah.
And we actually thought this and we approached him on WhatsApp, but anyhow dates didn't match and stuff
Hmm.
didn't work out. But yeah, I think for anyone also, I feel not only podcast but podcast की वजह से you also get many other opportunities. Just give it a shot,
Exactly.
right? uh,
Absolutely.
because probably जैसे you also told in your previous answer, right, that you have a team of 2 people who dropped out of college and are helping you out with short form of content.
Yeah.
It's actually real that me and my partner in the podcast who handles the production,
Hmm.
we also found out a white space and we started a production company
Very
where we
nice.
now are helping founders to make their content. We are helping with them scripting their production,
Very
and we got
nice.
our 2 clients from the podcast itself, right? The
Wow.
guests which we hosted, we got them as our clients. So
Lovely.
I think giving a shot is everything, right? I think opportunity
Absolutely.
is open to you once you give it a shot.
Yes, no, congratulations. I think that is a testament to exactly what I was talking about. Congratulations on the great work, and I'm sure it's only the start.
Yeah, for us it's only the start, and probably having you on the show is the is my pleasure because you are someone whom I feel really resonate, as I told you, and also at the same time I look up to you. That
That's
okay,
very kind of you.
I know that I know it feels really great that when you start out and you have no plans and then people are looking up to you,
Yeah,
right? So, I just want to know more about this journey of podcasting as of now.
sure.
That when you quit your job at Angelist and you started out with your own ISV venture
Yeah,
where you were investing, right? How did you initially found the partners who would fund you? What was it through your podcast guest itself, or what was the path out there?
sure. So I actually, when a year, I spent about 3 years at Angelist India, and about a year into Angelist, I realized that, hey, this world of angel investing is very fascinating. So I want to make something happen here as well, and I want to do something tangible alongside podcasting. So that's when I realized how, investing works, what founders want. I spoke to multiple investors and got my knowledge on how to make this happen. And then I started investing a bit, and that's when I realized that, okay, I can be good at it. I really enjoy it. What I find most liberating, Shrey, is the fact that entrepreneurship is the biggest leveler, right? So if you can be a part of somebody's journey when they are starting out with capital, with knowledge, through content, with community of people alongside you, I think that's the best thing you could possibly do to help somebody out in some shape or form. And that's when I realized that I really, really enjoy this. And my life philosophy has been, you try a couple of things wherever something sticks because you enjoy it, there's depth, you are good at it, you double down on it. And that's when, once we'd invested in about 10-15 companies, I moved beyond AngelList and realized I should do this by myself. And now we've invested in about 30 companies. The initial start is always very difficult, right? Because I was still young when I started investing. I was 23 at the time, not 25. And the idea was that I'd never done this before. How will I figure it out? But thankfully, I think what helped was, again, the podcast had given me proof of work. So when I went to somebody, I did not have to explain a lot. because hey, I could show them that I had done some really good work, and that makes sure that they respect you. That also makes sure that they know that I'm not speaking in the air. Because it's one thing to say I'm curious, that I hustle, that I take initiative, right? But hey, if I can show my work to you, right, and be like, hey, I've hustled for this, I've already been curious, I've already proven that I do a lot of work, I do a lot of work in depth, then that just proves what you're trying to say. Which means that my curve was easier because of that. Then I got a lot of support from people on the podcast. Thankfully, when you do a good quality podcast, right, it also establishes trust. So beyond what listeners get to see, the people that I was hosting, they were all very forthcoming and trusting to say that, hey, he's doing a good job. We want to help him out as well because it seems like he's trying to do something nice. And that became the other additional layer. So I think my cold start problem of starting something, not knowing what needs to be done, got solved because of this very reason, where I was able to rely on a lot of people because of my podcast and get their support. They started investing in my deals wherever I would bring something on the table. And then I would ensure that every step of the way I'm being very careful. So in investing, you have the founder, which is the most important, in which company you're investing, and then your investors. So I would be very careful. I would be very in depth. I would spend a lot of time, and I still continue doing so with all of my investments and investors. And that sort of made the job easier as you go ahead. But you keep at it always. And I still continue to diligently spend time wherever I'm doing something, work really hard, and that sort of like solves for it. But initially, the podcast had a major role, which is why I keep saying that for me, the podcast, so like you mentioned, right, you were able to convert clients from the podcast. I was able to convert investors from my podcast. And that was a major uh, point in my sort of like brief success as of now, because it has contributed a lot to what I do. And then that opens up further gates. We now invested in 30 companies, close to $5 million of invested capital, which is almost 40 crores. And it's been a phenomenal journey.
It's really great to know that probably this industry of podcasting, when we look at it, right? I think it's growing as a whole because I think in
Absolutely.
past couple of years, right, we have seen Nikhil Kamath coming up with his own podcast. We
Yeah.
also saw Zomato, Dipender Goyal coming with his podcast for a bit. We also know Bombay Shaving Company, right?
Yeah.
Shantanu coming up with his own podcast. So I think that podcasting as an industry is now merging with marketing. Can I say that, right? What do you think on that?
Absolutely. No, I think podcasting is here to stay. I think I have seen all of these podcasts, by the way, right in front of my eyes, come up with their first episode and then also the massive success, and rightly so that they are deserving. I think people are realizing that old forms of media are now going away, and new age media means there has to be authenticity. Conversations have to be at the center of marketing. And that's where podcasts become a very great mechanism to reach out to a lot of people in a very authentic manner, because you can't fake a conversation of 2 hours, 1 hour, right? You can't be scripted in that mechanism, and that is the true raw form of learning. When you're talking to people and they are sharing genuine thoughts, us talking about podcasting is also our way to maybe help other people by sharing our experiences of podcasting. So I think podcasting is here to stay. It's also a very interesting time for Indian startups with the Shark Tank in India. You can see that a lot of popularity of Indian startups is coming to place. In 2018, if you would ask like a lot of people, okay, Flipkart, do you order or not? People would say yes, but still they wouldn't know if Flipkart is a startup, big company, whatnot, right? Now people are having these conversations. People are talking about funding. That's become mainstream. People are talking about new age products. There are a lot of brands. Like if you think about a day to day of a corporate man, right? Their day is surrounded by startups. They will order from Blinkit in the morning. They will go in an Ola cab to the office. They will order from Zomato for lunch. They will go back and maybe use Book My Show to go to a like maybe a restaurant or let's say a theater. Everything like around you is actually a startup. You'll wear, a lens cut. lens for your eyes. You will figure out so many different things. You'll wear a Mokobara bag, whatnot. So around you are all startups, which means that the consumer is now starting to ask, hey, what am I buying and who's made these products? And that means startups are at the center of it. So net, what I'm trying to say is like business content is on the rise. Marketing is now new age, and new age marketing directly means being authentic with the audience, bringing conversations to the table, and being absolutely raw and candid. And if you can do that, I think podcasts are the best way to make it happen.
Hmm. Yes, that's what I also feel that the one client which we converted, as I said you right, what we did was that we invited him on this business podcast, and we are now helping him make his spiritual podcast.
Oh,
I
wow.
think podcasting as a whole is increasing, right? That's what I feel.
Absolutely.
No, I saw your podcast with Ayush Vadva, right? And it was really great that it was really insightful to learn about marketing and all. So what I also learned from it was that you and him, and he also uploaded you on that you are someone who reviews the pitch decks of startups very much, right?
Yeah,
So now I would like to talk about the venture which you run, right? Because
sure.
if you are someone who is seeing pitch decks every day, right?
Yeah.
What is something which you look into a pitch deck as an investor, and what do you feel that you have noticed while also podcasting these people who have been successful in their startups, right? So I
Yeah.
think you are someone who is in middle right now, that you also know the stories of the one who have succeeded, and also the one who is seeing people who are developing their startups. So I think
Yeah.
there has to be a pattern which you could use to connect these two different places. Now, how would you define
Mm.
it, right? What is something which you look into a pitch deck, and what is something which you noticed could make someone successful if they are doing it while developing their company?
Sure. No, that's a very important question for any investor today, because that's the job in terms of identifying what makes real success happen before it is obvious, right? Like today we look at the Ola, Oyo, Zomatos of the country, and we all know it's successful. But what did the investor thinking in 2008, 13, whatnot, right? What did they see then that made it evident that, okay, this can be successful, right? I think the answer there is, see, in pitch decks, you just need to very clearly explain why you are doing what you are doing, and have you thought through the future when, which means that you should, as a founder, explain the why you are the best people to solve for it.
Yeah. Am I not audible?
Hey Shrey, I think I lost you there.
Ah, no, I'm here. I'm not visible. Hello.
Hello?
I'm audible. Hello. I am able to see you. Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
No, I was able to see you and I was able to hear you, but probably you weren't able to
Yeah,
see
yeah,
me.
yeah. No worries. Let me maybe rephrase and we can, I'm guessing you can edit
Yeah,
this
yeah,
out.
no issue. Yeah, yeah, no issue.
Okay, perfect. Um, so, as I was saying, when you're looking at a pitch deck, what you're primarily trying to understand as an investor is how clearly does the founder understand why they are doing it, what are the pain points that they are trying to solve for, and how much into the future have you sort of thought about. So, as an investor, if I see clearly written, these are the insights, this is the market, this is the problem, and this is how we want to solve it, with some understanding of market dynamics like competition, timing, tailwinds. That's the very simplistic explanation. It's simple in wording, not in practice. So founders will have to do a deep job at making it happen. But I'm certain that if you really want to build a 10, 12 year journey, at the least, you would have thought these things through. And that's what separates great founders from the good ones. And I think great founders there also, that's the success sign as well. As I'm looking at my portfolio, as I've looked at some companies which I met maybe 2, 3 years back and are doing really well today, I think this clarity of thought that, hey, we know what we are doing, and at the same time, this agility to know that there will be things which will go wrong, there are things that we don't know, but we are very driven to make it happen. The hunger will be really, really strong as complement. So clarity of thought, agility, and hunger become very, very interesting. And then you have to look at, like, genuinely understand why somebody is doing this, right? In the sense that some people do it opportunistically because they think there's an opportunity, they think there's a way to make money. Unfortunately, the journey is so difficult that if your motivation is very short lived, right? That I want to make money in 3 years, unfortunately, that will not happen because it's such a tough journey, which means that you will fall sooner than later, and that will make you not succeed in the long run, which is why it's important to understand for us as investors as to why a founder is doing this. And more often than not, founders that succeed are ones that just really derive joy in building things. They derive joy in serving the customer. They derive joy in value creation. And these are such important things for a founder. And it's not easy to fake these things, right? So when a founder genuinely means it, an investor can see it, which means it will always get reciprocated. And so many founders who will not have these foundational things sorted will be, faking it in some shape or form, and that does not work. Thus, it is very important to have some of these things in a meaningful manner. And yeah, I guess those are the things that I look for. And that's why it's such a pleasure to be an investor, because you interact with founders who are building the future. You come across these dreamy eyes, and you come across such great, diverse people, that it's a pleasure to be an investor. And whenever we get a chance to partner with a founder who's amazing, it just fills my heart with a lot of joy. So, very grateful to be doing what I get to do today.
No, when you invest in a company, right, you always know the risk that probably the law would play out and 80 to 90% of your investments may die out, right?
Yeah,
So how you manage the portfolios of a company, that okay, do you look out for as an investor, do you look out for the game of 5 years, for a 10-year game? What is the analysis which goes into your mind? I would not ask you from an investor perspective, but someone who has been into this space where you have already interacted with multiple founders
yeah,
who have successfully built a company, right? So as that podcaster, when you are investing in a company, what analysis goes to your mind, right? Do you find
yeah,
out patterns with the funds who are successful? You do an industry review. What is something which you do personally?
yeah. No, I think one of the major difficulties of being an investor, especially in early stage startups, is to make peace with the fact that you will be wrong more often than you will be right, which is very difficult because it's not something you're used to, right? You're used to, or your natural instinct is to be right, which means that you go in to any investment believing that it will be a success. However, you only realize over a period of time that that is not true. And so you have to build a muscle of knowing that you are okay taking risk. You are okay knowing that some of your investments will not work. In fact, most of your investments will not work. Yet you have to keep believing in yourself. So I think what you need to become good at is realizing how to not make the same mistakes. So let's say if I've invested in a company that had a small target market, right, or TAM, right? I will have to ensure that in 12 months, if it becomes evident that this was a small market to enter into, I don't make a similar mistake the second time. Or let's say something in a founder is not great, yet there are other amazing things. However, I've decided to invest. Maybe that thing I will not repeat again. So I think being very strong in giving yourself feedback and being very brutally honest in terms of knowing what not to do again is a major skill as an investor. Now, in terms of your portfolio, you then have to be deeply engaged to understand when things are not working out, to also then understand what did not work out. Now, the difficult part about this is there are so many factors that can go wrong in a startup that you can't predictably understand what went wrong and why this company did not succeed. It can sometimes be regulation, it can be sometimes internal drama within the founders, it can be sometimes that the founder did not have the right motivation, it can be external reasons like, like COVID comes into picture, or it can be like the AI wave has killed so many startups purely because productivity has significantly risen. And so if you were doing something that does not require so many people, you're just losing out. So I think these are things that you have to look out for, because otherwise in 12 months when something does not work, you don't know why it didn't work, which means that you will repeat that same mistake. So I think the bottom line is to understand where the mistakes are happening by having a strong feedback loop and ensuring that those mistakes are not repeated. If you can do that as an investor, you'll probably become a good investor over a period of time. And then the realization that you have to be okay in knowing that you will be more often wrong than not. And if you'll have to make peace with it, peace with the fact that there is significant risk in the entire investing game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, because you invest more and you make peace with the loss as an investor. Uh, why do you think that angel investing or venture capital or funding in general, what's the future of it in India, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to see a boom in investing? Are we going to see more retail investors come up into this space? Because I also had this idea and also saw a couple of startups which are trying to inculcate retail investors into angel investing or VCs, right?
Yeah.
By lowering the ticket size and working the maths there. What do you see the future of investing out there for India specifically?
Yeah, no, I think the future of investing is bright. I really believe that the macro thesis that India will become a $10 trillion economy is true. Where will value creation happen to make it go to a 10 trillion economy? Via startups. So if economy has to rise, startups have to be there. If startups have to be there, you need venture capital funding to make it happen. So I think if you just go reverse by knowing that there are certain truths to a growing economy, I think you will also land to the same conclusion. Now, what kind of capital is questionable? Like how much Indian capital, how much foreign capital, how much early stage capital, how much private equity capital. Those are things that we will see because there is this technical thing that India has not produced a lot of IPOs yet, which means that there might be liquidity issues. So we're still seeing how the world processes Indian markets to understand how much capital will come in. But the bottom line will always remain that venture capital is necessary for startups, and startups are necessary for economic growth. Now, having said that, we will have to then understand the nuances of VC. Now, why venture capital works, the returns on paper work, they've not worked in practicality. However, everybody is taking the 10-year view. What happened in the US? We have seen a developed market like the United States, like China, really thrive with startups, which is why retail investors are also starting to take notice, right? This is an asset class which will only grow, which means that people will not want to miss out. Indian family offices who were traditionally averse to participating in alternative asset classes are now getting interested in this world of startups. There are pre-IPO rounds which are actually being subscribed to by Indian family offices. Swiggy, Oyo are very good examples. We have seen this year's been really good for IPOs, by the way. We've seen a Mama Earth IPO, we've seen Office, we've seen Digit Insurance. So I think net Indian startups and the ecosystem is here to stay. Retail investors will also want a piece of the pie, which is why there will be a lot of innovative solutions, which is a great space to build in. A bunch of people are trying to solve for it. Angelist in India, also where I worked, was one way to solve for it, but there are many others that are coming up, and a lot of this financial engineering in a positive way will be very helpful to get people involved. However, it is still a very risky asset class which has not been proven yet. So I think people, before they get all excited that okay, these unicorn valuations, whatnot, they are true, but you have to be very, very careful, and you have to be open to taking this kind of risk before you come into the asset class. So as long as that works for you, it's all right, and I think you should invest. Yeah,
Got it. Uh, what are some things which you have noticed out there that probably makes us founder successful?
mhm,
When you were interviewing, let's say, Biryani by Kilo ka founder, when you were with the MMT ka founder, right? When you were there with Ayush Vatwa, what is a common pattern or a mindset which you notice in these people which makes them, the top 0.1%?
sure.
And how do you translate it to someone who wants to start out with zero, like you did, right?
Yeah.
A person at zero wanting to be a 0.1%, what's the pattern out there?
Yeah. And that's a very good question, Shrey. And that's something I spent significant time thinking about because the podcast is not only content which is point in time. It is technically a library of insights. And I always want to make it very evergreen in nature. And the best thing will happen when I can actually derive patterns from the podcast. So I actively think about this. I think there are three to five things that I want to probably mention. One is this sense of calmness in turmoil that founders have that is very difficult to practice. And if you can master, you will become really, really successful. Which is to say that, founders' lives are so uncertain, yet they are very, very calm through that turmoil. No high is very high, no low is very low. So it's not like if it's a funding announcement, they'll go gaga and like very, very happy. Or if there's a large contract, they'll go very, very happy. At the same time, if there is a major crisis going on, they'll not go very, very upset. They will be steady on their course of long-term thinking because that's what they understand the best. And I think it's a very, very important trait that I also try to practice, where I am so driven that short-term fluctuations, good or bad, don't impact me as much. So I think that's number one. Second is this sense of deep intellectual honesty, which means that, hey, founders never lie to themselves or to other people, which means that it's easy to sometimes make excuses. It's easy to not face hard things. It's easy to just assume and give yourself so many different excuses to not do the hard things, right? So I'm repeating because it helps to understand that a lot of people practice this subconscious lying. They don't mean to lie. They just don't realize that they are, and they keep pushing the can down the road. But great founders are very, very self-aware, very honest to themselves, and very upfront in facing the challenges, which I really, really appreciate. The third is that they have this sense of strong purpose, which is deeper than themselves, right? Which is to say that this is not driven by just wealth, not driven by fame. They genuinely appreciate creating value. And I love that because that genuineness and doing something really big is just very hard to practice. Then this is a bit technical, but a lot of founders which are successful always say that hiring is the biggest problem that they solve for. And the deeper insight there is you have to be great at working with people, identifying great people, and convincing them on your mission. That is the hiring bucket, and it extends to other things around you as well. So are you a great magnet when it comes to other amazing people? Can you sell to them really well? Are you a good judge of character? When people are working with you, do they thrive in your environment? All of these are very important questions to ask, and things that you can start practicing even before you start a company. And this I've seen as a commonality across every one of my podcast guests that I've hosted. And then the fifth is this sense of sacrifice that you have to be willing to practice, right? Which is to say that entrepreneurship is very hard, very challenging, full of hard calls, but you still do it, which means that you're willing to give up on some things. That again, most people are unfortunately not willing to. The idea of entrepreneurship sounds good, but not the journey. People look at the end and say that, hey, I also want to be a shark. Hey, I also want to raise money. Hey, I also want to be featured on a newspaper. Hey, I also want to be on a podcast. But that's not true. Being on a podcast or all of these different fancy things that we see about founders is a byproduct of years of hard work, of years of putting in a lot of trade-offs. So many founders on my show will mention, hey, there is a trade-off for family time. Hey, I probably can't take care of my health as much. Hey, I probably don't make as much money as some of my peers, and I could be doing that if I were in a job. And those are difficult things to practice. And that is where I think a lot of self recognition also helps. So I think these are things that I've seen across the board. And I feel if I try to think of those in my context in my life, and I try to then practice it to say that, hey, maybe these are things that I can start to practice. One of the things that why I started working on my health was also because I realized so many people on my podcast would say that we had to miss out on our health because we were just so focused on our company. And then I realized that, hey, if I ever want to give myself a shot at building a company, I don't want to have that regret. So, can I, as a young person itself, start prioritizing my health? And that's why I was like, okay, maybe this is something that I should do right now itself because later I may not have the time. So, I've changed a lot of lifestyle habits relating to health. So, yeah, I think these are very, very important things to think about.
Hmm. I just got one more point. Where I resonate to you. The same way I started running was because I heard a story somewhere that Narayan Murthy was on a flight with someone, and
Hmm.
he asked that, okay, what's your life's biggest regret? And
Hmm.
he told that I made this $1 billion company Infosys, but the only regret I have is that I didn't take care of my health. My legs
Hmm.
hurt, right? I have $1 billion. There's no point in it. I can't walk properly.
Yeah,
So I think that's a really great point, and the 5 points which you gave are I think this is the essence of a podcast, right?
yeah,
That as a host, I am learning from you, which you have learned from, n number of successful founders out there. Uh,
absolutely agreed.
yeah. What's the future for Jivraj, right? Not what,
Sure.
because I also see you as someone who has the hunger or a mission to do something out there, right?
Yeah,
So, what's going into your mind in developing ISV, in developing probably a new venture, maybe, right?
yeah,
So, what do you think about this whole setup which you have made for yourself? I would not give a timeline, right? 5 years, 10 years.
yeah,
That's upon you,
yeah,
right?
yeah. No, I think again a question that I think deeply about because honestly, I got really lucky to stumble upon something that I really enjoy. I love doing, and I do it with all my heart, and I'm finding success in. So now I have the awareness, support system, knowledge to do something even bigger. So I keep questioning myself what that bigger looks like. I think I don't have a concrete answer, but I do know I want to build a company someday. So I do know I will charter on a journey someday to build my own company. Till then, what I've realized is the eighth wonder of life, which is compounding, as Warren Buffett says, right? Is to keep doing things that I truly cherish, that I'm good at, and let them compound, which means that, hey, I'm good at investing. At least it looks like it. So I will continue investing well and continue partnering with great founders so that I can help them in some shape or form. I do love my content, my podcast, and it feels like, I'm doing a good job at it. So I want to keep at it and really let it compound. But for my bigger journey, I do think I will embark on, building a company which is bigger than me, bigger than perhaps not in the media space, but in a space which is more value driven from a monetary lens, not from a wealth generation, but for stakeholders, right? I really love these B2B companies, for instance, who solve for like commerce related issues, which in a non-tech world were just so difficult, very manual in nature. So something that is just more concrete as a use case. But till then, I'm very lucky. And the way I look at the podcast is also in a very entrepreneurial light. Like, what can I be doing more? How can I do really good quality work? How many people am I reaching? I constantly think about not the views, number of views, but the quality of views. So I think I don't want to lose out on my principles, but I do recognize that I can do bigger things because I am in a position which allows me to. And that also means, can I help other people to accomplish those goals? So I will keep doing my part to do bigger things and help take people alongside me. And hopefully I can, keep doing good work with the help of so many great people around me, so many great listeners who just value my content, and I'm very grateful for that.
Hmm.
Yes.
The path where the position where you have reached right now, right? Do you contribute this to your luck, your hard work, right? What when you think about it at night, right? That
Yeah.
what made you here, right? From nothing.
Honestly,
What is the thing which you contribute to?
I think two things. One major is luck, and the second is not giving up. And I think the mental model is, if you don't give up, hopefully luck plays to your favor further and further, because it values you more, it values the effort more. See, when I got started, my ambition was, I'll do this for 6 months and find a job, because I thought I'll learn, which was why I started, and then I would be on my next journey. But when it started to work, I kept at it, and I was like, okay, there's something that's happening here and I really enjoy it. Why should I stop doing it? And this was irrespective of, how much money I was making or how much effort it was going into it. I just wanted to do good work. So I kept at it, kept at it, kept at it, which is why one of my favorite words is actually perseverance, or this factor called grit. Grit is passion plus perseverance. There's a great book which talks about this as well, and it attributes a lot of what founders do, by the way, to grit. They're not just passionate; they're also very perseverant. They're at it. They never give up. So I realized that, hey, if I don't give up, luck will continue to my favor. So had I stopped my podcast, by the way, in 2022, I probably wouldn't have come this far. So I think the insight there is, I got really lucky. I started a podcast when not everybody was in it. So by the way, like, if I were really smart today, I'd probably not start a podcast, because I would look at everything and be like, hey, it's so crowded out there, right? So I started at a time which was very good, not very competitive. Then I started at a time when Indian startups were really growing. Then Angelist happened to me. And then I kept at it, right? And then along the way, somebody came along, supported. And so all of those things are luck. But I think you have to keep at it, persevere, not give up, to ensure that you keep getting lucky. And that's the thing that I attribute my success to. And the fact that one of the things I was discussing with a friend, and I was telling him that, hey, I have not changed a single thing in my podcast when I was doing 5,000 subscribers to when I'm doing 50,000, which is a good and a bad thing. Good thing because my quality for even 5,000 people was always top notch, right? Which means that I don't have to change myself to cater to a larger base. So I felt a sense of joy, right? That I was doing my best even when the base was low, which means I'm not driven by external factors. I'm driven by internal factors of striving for excellence. The bad part was, okay, what should I do more for this additional base? And that's something I'm figuring and I'm continuously doing. But that's to say that, okay, you have to keep at it, you have to strive for excellence, you have to do great work, and hopefully a combination of some of this will give you the luck that you deserve and need, and that you will be grateful for, and hopefully that will take you to the next level.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that probably Peter Thiel has written in his book Zero to One that
Yeah,
successful people always contribute their success to luck, but
yeah,
it's not luck. It's just
yeah,
the sighting of opportunities. It's the strategic risk that they take, right?
yeah,
So I think your journey also has been one of the I think you are also someone who is open to opportunities, right? The way you talk, the way you approach people, right? The way you present yourself. I feel that you are someone who is always out there with open eyes, open ears. You see an opportunity and you are the first one to act upon it, right? So I think that has worked for you a lot, and that has made you what you are right now. And
agree.
and it's just it's just starting to grow now. It's much more ahead now.
Yes.
Only a couple of questions which I have is, what is one thing which you fear, right? We always talk about, okay, successful, and probably you will be doing this, but as a podcaster, as an investor, as you personally, right, what is something which you, I would not say also fear, but which is in your concern out there, right? That okay,
Yeah,
this is something which you always look out to.
yeah. No, I think this fact that sometimes you tend to get, and this is a learning from people, that sometimes you tend to take it easy, or sometimes you tend to forget how much you need to work for something, or sometimes you be comfortable. I think all of these things I fear. I was telling somebody that today, for me to have a conversation with a founder, and I mean this in a humble manner, is not very difficult, right? So with zero preparation, I can have a decent conversation, a 7 on 10, a 7.5 on 10. But I have to do a 9.5 on 10 conversation on my podcast, which means that gap of two, I always have to strive to achieve. And I have to always excel. And that's an internal drive. So there will be times where I will want to take something easy because maybe I'm having a rough day, there's a lot of work, I've not slept, but that's the moment in which I fear, hey, I'll not do a good job. And so I value, at least on the podcast, my questions, my hosting skills so much that I never want to. I fear the fact that someday I will probably stop putting in the effort because of some other reason, right? And I never want to feel that way. So it's a genuine concern to say that I don't fall to complacency. I don't stop putting in the effort, and that is a concern that I really think about sometimes on the professional lens, and yeah, on the personal lens, I'm just like afraid of losing people. I think that's a very human concern of losing people around me, and that is something that I really fear.
Hmm, it's actually great. Okay, so if you were to develop one product, right, or
Mhm.
one software
Yeah,
for podcasters, right,
yeah.
what it would be?
I would develop a repurposing software, like something that I put my content to in one software, and it gives me a Twitter thread, it gives me a LinkedIn post, it gives me an Instagram reel, it gives me a YouTube short, it gives me my description for YouTube. I think that part should, in a world of especially AI, be really solved, where you can, let's say, ensure that one piece of effort can lead to multiple different universes, because different universes in social media require different kind of content, and now software should be intelligent enough to pull it off.
Hmm. Okay,
Yeah,
so I think there are a few of this,
yeah, there are coming
companies
up.
already going out, and yeah,
Yeah,
they are coming up. So I think it would be much more greater. Yeah, so
correct.
we come to the end of the conversation, and this part is not for you; it's for us, right?
Sure.
So we always ask our guests that, how was your review about the podcast? Because I want you to criticize me for 3 to 4 points, and I want you to give me 3 to 4 points which you felt were strong. Obviously, this is my first online podcast, and you won't see our setup, right? Already
Yeah.
there was a production if we were offline out there. So if you were to review, right, me as a host or this
Sure.
podcast, how would you criticize us? Because you are also a podcaster, right? You have some
Yeah.
points which you always look up to.
Yeah. No, I think, to be honest, you have been really nice and thoughtful in navigating the conversation. I think there you are well researched for sure. You are deep in asking meaningful questions and not asking things which may not be helpful for the audience. So honestly, I'd have to think more on what could have been better, but no, it feels like you are cracking all the right things. And as long as you keep the bar for excellence very high, you will be able to really crack it. In online environments, of course, it's difficult to, let's say, judge or evaluate body language or sense of comfort, but I felt comfortable since I've been on, and that's a major skill for a podcaster, something that I really think about as well. So honestly, net this has been really great. Maybe what helps is to have a pre-conversation, which is more uh, perhaps not in depth, but the first time that we are chatting may not necessarily be on a podcast. I think you will face that reservation because sometimes you might feel asking for time can be a bit too much. But I would recommend thinking of developing your own process, or even at the start of a recording, maybe taking 10 minutes extra that comes from your recording, but more time to share more context about you, because then I empathize. Like I got to know a bit, right? But maybe I would have loved to know more. So that's a thing. And more than know more, it just helps establish confidence, rapport, why you are doing the podcast. And that is a very good thing as well. So that's the only perhaps input that I would give. But otherwise, a really good job, Shrey. I'm really glad to have interacted with you, and I'm sure you have a really, really bright future. When I used to do a podcast, like when I was 21, I started, so people used to call me young, and I used to get very happy. And you have a lot of bright years ahead of you. So, congratulations on all the good work you're doing.
Yeah, probably I will be turning 21 in a week now. So I'm 20 right now.
Nice, nice,
Yeah.
very good.
Uh, really great to have you on the show. Would you mind if I take a picture?
Oh no, please, please do.
Yeah, just a second. Okay. So I would just take a picture from my phone, right? Yep. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you,
Uh,
Shay. Have a good
uh,
one.
yeah. Thank you. Just once, when you will leave the studio, right? I think there
Mhm.
would be a bar that it's uploading. So
Okay.
I think it could be 100%, but just wait till it is 100%, right? So I'll get
It's
the mail from you.
99%, I think. I'll leave it and I'll wait for it to be 100%.
Yeah. Thank you, Raya, for giving your time.
My pleasure. Take care. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Thank you. Bye.